This is season 6, episode 13, number 221 of the Decoded podcast. Clef, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. The week, I would say, yeah, hard-ish week, but coming out of it, I'm having the moment right now, having the moment of the best way I can kind of put this is, and you noticed this from your rabbit. I'm in the grip right now of zoomies. I don't know what it's called for the rabbit. What's it called for rabbit? It's called something else for a rabbit.
When they run around really
Yeah, yeah,
fast,
yeah, yeah.
they call it a zoomie as well.
What's their kick though? You said they do like a
They
jump and
jump and kick. It's called a binky.
a binky. I'm in binky mode right now. And the reason I say that, one of the reasons that I say that is because um so the when was it? Last a week ago was Jake's birthday. That night when we got home, I started to feel a little bit of a cold coming on. And I know my tells. I try and push them off. I try and say, nah, that's not a thing. And then some of my brain is like, Cluff, you know yourself. You know what the next thing is. And for me, there's a couple different ones. Primary tell for me that something's coming on is if I'm rubbing my head, and I do that, it's a gesture my dad used to do as well. Like I will sit on the couch and I'm just kind of like scratching or rubbing my scalp. My hair hurts. It's kind of weird. It's almost like you wear a baseball cap or a hat for too long, and then your hair corrects you. And like, oh man, like it almost feels like you've bruised the follicles or something. So it's like this weird scalp sensitivity thing that I'm entirely aware of. Um, my other one though is like it's just a random spot of it almost feels like of abrasion on my throat. And it could be anywhere. It might be in the back here, it might be back here, but you just notice it. And every time you swallow, you're like, oh, there's just a little kind of a scratchy pinprick right there. And I was like, yeah, that maybe it won't turn. But by Sunday, it had turned, right? I was starting to kind of lock up sinuses, bit of a headache. I'm like, yeah, this is definitely a cold. And I swung there because I have my flu shot. I've been boosted, COVID boost. So I'm as armored up as I can be. Um, and so, sitting there on Sunday night, I'm like, this is not getting any better. So I had 2 days off, Monday, Tuesday. And then I'm starting to come out of it a little bit. So I go back to school on Wednesday, get 1 day back in there, and then Thursday morning, J-Man comes downstairs. He's like, I don't feel good. I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay home today. So then I was home on Thursday and I was back on Friday. So it's been a week like that. It's a dad week. It's a parent week. It's a teacher week. Like this is the week. It's not there's nothing special about it. But here's where I come back to in this moment. It's this binky moment, because binky moments are not constant, right? These are like these spikes of joy. Um, I guess you could, in human terms, maybe you can call them manic. You just feel like you're peaking, right? Get a bunch of cleaning done, get something done because you're feeling good. But it was yesterday on the way into work that I noticed I had a lot of access to good energy. And I think it's that for me, it's a very small space between not feeling well, physically well, and it's a short hallway to now back to um life as planned. There's a short hallway there where I almost feel like I have this excess of focus. And I don't know if it's just the counterpoint of not having focus. I don't I think it could be that. I think it's a couple things. Like, you're sick and you just can't you can't contribute to your own existence in a way that you did sometimes even just the day before if it hits you hard. And that's why, like, for me, it does tend to hit hard, burn bright, and then done. That tends to be how I get sick, which I really, really like. That's the same with with Jake now for the most part as well, my son, my spouse, and my other kid. They tend to, it takes a little bit longer to get out of their system. Different people, different ways. So I'm in this moment of transition, and I have this abundance of energy. And yeah, yesterday I'm like whistling to myself, I'm singing, I've got all these ideas popping. I somehow, managed to cobble together a poem, get it posted up and drop. Like I had a burst of creativity. Um and then, I kind of get to today and I feel like I'm back in the groove, which I guess it's ideal, but I really liked that Binky moment. Like I liked that I was getting hit with this energy, and I was I don't have a better way. Maybe you have a better way to kind of walk me through this, but I was just aware. I was aware in this space of good energy, good thinking, connecting, uh feeling. It was a holistic moment. And just coming out of it, regardless if I'm not in that same kind of um almost naive, kind of like simple naivete that it feels good to feels good to feel good. I like that I noticed it. I like that I didn't just move to I like that my wellness kind of coincided, I guess, with um time for me to notice that I was feeling better. Because I think without that, it's easy to go back to regular scheduling programming without really appreciating the difference between when you're really not feeling well, evidence-based, evidence-based not feeling well. And you can hear it. My voice is still, I'm still a little locked up, but I don't have the this is the coming out of it version. It's not the me diving in. So that's how this week ended, with me getting donuts. So that's there's the long segue into it.
I totally understand the idea of feeling good about feeling good. It reminds me of 2 weeks ago when you and I talked before the podcast or after the podcast when I was talking to you about my that I had discovered this I don't know what to even call it. I had discovered this like permission for me to do some writing. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
feeling like I was feeling good about feeling good. Excuse me. I was able to pump out a couple of pieces. Um, Over the last week and a half, I've made 2 videos. So I was feeling a bit of a creative punch as well. 3 videos, I think. One that was work based and 2 that were like hockey based for my son's team. And it was just feeling alive. Um, I'm not feeling so great today. So as I
Mhm.
hear you talking about feeling good, it exhausts me to hear you talk about that because excuse me, I'm so not at that level and I don't have that energy. So when I hear you talk about it, I'm like, oh, that hurts to hear you. It hurts because it's like you're vibrating and the me getting those signals is like it's too much. It's like I can't do it. I can't do it right now. But I am looking forward to the next time I vibrate in terms of feeling good again and ready to rock. The donuts are the only thing keeping me going, and I actually have these donuts sitting in front of me here. So we're gonna have to start eating soon because like I've been staring at these things since like 7 o'clock in the morning. I can't wait to dive in. Um, but yeah, I mean, when I picked these up yesterday, it was definitely like a positive moment in the week. I think I was telling you yesterday about my week and just feeling. I don't even know. I don't remember how I described it to you. I don't even know if you heard my message because I did it kind of late, but I was telling you about taking the armor off and letting some of that negativity of my work creep into me, and and then pushing back, like, nope, I'm not. I don't want any of this. Put the armor back on, so I'm more. My mindset is positive, and I'm looking at small wins rather than external expectations and traditional wins, which I'm in a non-traditional role, so I don't get traditional wins. When I do, I don't know what to do with them anymore. Um, I really don't. I found myself, talk about dopamine hit, driving to the Cambridge location of Bosco, excited, excited to see my colleagues in that space, excited to do a little bit of work in that space because I feel like I belong. And but part of that belonging to an alternative way of operating, I have to be careful because I can't measure my success by traditional standards in an alternative setting. I don't, at this moment, I don't care who you are. You can tell me what you want. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. I don't have, when I hear my wife talk about her students and their reading levels and their numeracy experiences, I don't have any of that anymore right now. For me, it's like my wife will say, "Did they answer the door today when you went to the house?" "Yeah, I got to talk to them on the porch." And she's like, "That's awesome." And I'm like, "It is." For me, that's my win for the day. And then there's like I think I may have told you there's a family I'm involved with. I went to their house 4 times this week because only the first time I met one of the parents, and then the other 3 times nobody will answer the door. They're either not home or they're just not coming to the door, right? So I can't help people if they won't come to the door. Um, but anyway, so I seriously have to let go of, not focus on the traditional successes, especially now that I'm feeling a little down in terms of like I'm not physically, I'm not feeling great, right? So I got to be careful, keep my mental mindset in a good check until my physical can come back to where I want it to be. So that's where I'm at right now. But
I,
bro, you let me
I,
up with the donuts.
yeah,
Go ahead, and then we'll jump into donuts.
I was just gonna say, I love how you're so that whole me noticing the binky. There's definitely moments that happen. Um, not so you looking at your successes here, and I've said to you like the things that you're doing, they make sense to me. I mean, we have some overlap in our I think our mindset in the fulsome picture of what student success can be. I think both of us have common connections around like when we if you were to go to uh um an ed camp and they're all up in the open space technology pineapple pineapple chart, whoever arrives are the right people to arrive, just walk up, listen to the conversation, these at camp kind of conversations. Everyone, the topics are, go to the library and this top someone want to talk about assessment, go to the gym and there's going to be a group that's talking about communication and connecting with the community. I would suspect you sitting in that group, you would be a part of a very small um, cohort of people that have experiences that don't align with the common tongue of what that means. I've had a similar experience back in the day when I was doing alt ed, and I would go to a staff meeting and I would have a very clear sense of what's being talked about right now is not how it happens in alt ed. And at that exact same moment, I had moments where I'm like, okay, maybe I should be trying to make alt ed like this. I had this moment of, I'm not sure. I had this moment of, am I doing something wrong? I had this moment of insecurity, like the way that I'm navigating and being responsive to the needs of the kids that don't always show up in front of me. Yet I have to create a continuum that supports the needs, regardless if they're in front of me. I found often I didn't always find individuals that could help mentor me down that path. So I felt like I was always in the space of making decisions that I didn't even know if I would get in trouble for the decisions because myself, I had nothing, like you said, I had nothing to measure it against. Nothing to measure it against. No one that had ever been in the blue pages for making the decisions to support a kid that I was. No one in my school that's sort of making similar decisions. bits of it. For example, I've told you about a principal, David, back in the day, that was formative to me. And he and I walking to the local park and trying to find students to come to school that day. That's one of those moments where something in your brain kind of goes, wow, like this is not who you're. For me, it was like, is this school? And then quickly I'm like, obviously it is, because that's where I'm trying to get the kid. So then right away, that idea that this is school unfolds in a really mind-blowing kind of kaleidoscopic origami kind of fashion. And you start to see, you start to do the, well, if this is school, then, and that other side of the then is like where you're purely existing right now. And I think there's, it is one of those spaces where professional judgment is a creative tool. Professional judgment anchored in, isn't as anchored in, um, protocol as like the safety sort of things of protocol, right? There's a lot of, and so you're sort of making these moves. If this is where the kid is, then that's where I'm going to be, and I'm going to sort of document it, and I'm going to communicate it out to my leaders, and I'm going to make sure everyone's kind of aware of the framework that I'm working in. But I get the sense that's like happening to you on the daily. I love it. I love it because, I love edu anarchy. Love it. Love edu anarchy. I don't like it like I'm trying to sort of cause a riot. Never that. But I find often, I was using the example with someone the other day about, I saw online, I was inspired by something online. I saw online, just a dude walking in the forest. And I think his thing was, gonna lift 10 stones today and see what we find. I'm like, okay. And I watch, he's like, stone number one, nothing. Stone number two, oh, look, it's a red-backed salamander. And he names off these other five bugs. Stone number three, nothing. Stone number four, another red-backed salamander. And then a couple other things. He's like, oh my gosh, this and this in this forest? What the heck? Never seen that before, he said. Never seen that before. So I think that's stuck in my head. I think so he goes, and that's all it was. 10 stones. What do you find? That moment when he's doing a thing that's familiar to him, walking in the forest. So you and I are doing a thing that's familiar to us. We're teachers. We're working in EDU. He's walking through the forest in this experiential way, as in he's going to interact. I would say that's probably what you're doing. I know that's what I'm doing. First couple stones, nothing there. He's hoping to find something. Didn't say what he was looking for, but there was nothing there. Just more dirt, seeds, right? I guess he could have called out the seeds too. Then comes across this thing that is familiar, expected, kind of processes it, moves on, gets to the next thing. Is like, that's unexpected. That unexpected thing now becomes part of the operating system. Dude, your unexpected things is the edu anarchy that I love. It's stressful. It's enriching. It's like sometimes frightening. It can be sad. Like it can really swell up the emotions. And it can be isolating. It can be isolating. So I've said it before. I'll say it again. I do think that when I say I'm happy you're doing the work, I'm mindful that those exact same words have been said to me when someone's dumping a problem on my plate. I will say, when I say the words, it's because I do believe you have the skills not only to navigate that edu anarchy, but also the voice and the talent to keep that rock lifted long enough for other people to kind of go, if not appreciate it, to understand the implications of that moment happening in school. And whatever amount of time you're in this portfolio, I know it will change you. Like, I know you're going to come away changed in some way. You talk about it, we talk about that, some of the changes that are already happening to you. I dig it. I really love listening to your experiences in this and the stuff that you're wrestling with. And not for salacious means, but just because I know that space exists. It's the exact space that I thought just was not addressed when I was sitting at those staff meetings. They're like, okay, we're going to talk about increasing our literacy scores, which I get. I do get that as a tool for student success. But there was nobody there to sort of kind of bridge the gap between where I was and where the system thought everyone else was, right?
So I like the word edu anarchy. I also call it edu chaos. And
I love that. Edu
yeah,
chaos.
edu chaos because it's just total chaos.
Yeah.
And a really cool thing is I've learned, or I am learning, I feel pretty good right now about it. I'm learning how to dance with that chaos. So the chaos doesn't upset me anymore. It doesn't rile me up.
Mhm.
Um, it's just like, when I'm talking to a principal and they seem to be going 100 miles an hour because of a situation,
Yeah.
I'm like, slow down and breathe because you going 100 miles an hour isn't going to help you, your school, anybody around you right now. And I'm happy to go to the kid's door, but we all know 90% of the time what's going to happen when I go to the door. So just relax and breathe. Like, well, what are we going to do? Well, this is what I'm going to do. And then I slowly, I try to bring them down. I don't know if they know, but I'm trying to bring them down. I'm just saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the house. I'm going to do this. And then I'm based on if, you know, plan A happens at the house, and I'll go this way. If plan B happens, I'll go this way. And I'll let the social worker know, and I'll let my boss know. And then next thing you know, things are a little bit calmer. But it's just like the chaos in the kids' lives lead the educational staff to become um, like they're high with energy that is I call negative energy because they're like, what are we going to do, what are we going to do, like panicking. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't, like I say to them, I don't know what we're going to do.
Panic energy.
I've
Panic
taught them,
energy,
yeah,
I think, is a
panic
great way
energy,
to put
you
it.
can write that down. um, and it's like, relax. um, if I'm involved, it means this is not going to get fixed in a week. That's what I say to everybody. And I'll tell you, bro, I am so ready to take that edu wand with the magic and like crush it into a zillion pieces. This week I think I had several people expect educational magic to come out of me. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. There is no magic. There's me doing things, and then there's whether a student responds to those things.
Mhm.
If the student doesn't respond, doesn't matter what I did. It doesn't matter because they're not responding. So educational magic has come up this week. I've had enough of that. Oh, Roland will help. Just call Roland. You call Roland, and we're looking like a 6 month commitment, maybe longer. That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at 3 weeks and things are fixed. I'm sorry. I've been doing this now for what, a year and 4 months. And in that year and 4 months, I've not had any success stories happen in like a month. They just don't happen. At least like from my perspective. And if somebody out there knows how to do it, let me know. I'm ready. I'm ready. Um, so yeah, bro, edu chaos, um, panic energy, because everybody wants to help. It's not that people, well, that's not true.
I was I was
True.
I was gonna make a face. I was gonna make a face, but you got
Not
to what you're
everybody
saying.
wants to help. Not everybody wants to help. Many
Not
people.
everyone should.
Sure. So, to what you just said, there are some people that don't belong in the narrative but want to be in the narrative. Okay. But then there are
Yeah.
people that need to be part of the narrative that refuse to participate in the narrative. So,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing. But,
Yeah.
so when you dropped on me, I don't know what day it was, you dropped on me the Instagram post from Red Eye Cafe in Cambridge, Red Eye Cafe and Donuts, and you're like, it's their December. Every month they have different donuts for the month, and you're like, look at this, bro. Check this out. And I'm like, I think I said to you, let's do something on the podcast. I'm not 100% sure, so you have to excuse me if that's not how it went down.
Yep.
But then I said to you, give me some of the names of the donuts you want me to buy and try on the podcast. So you did, excuse me, which was awesome. And then you found a donut place with a great backstory,
Yeah.
and then you got some donuts. So I don't know if you want to tell that story or not, but if you do, when you're done, I think we should start tasting and evaluating these donuts.
Yeah. No, I'm down. It was just so Facebook can be, yeah. Facebook can be hit or miss, right, with the suggestions. Um, and even if you're sort of a locavore and you want to support businesses that are close to you, sometimes the support is the focus, not the actual awesomeness of the product. You're just like you're there because you want to support some small business. So I always go into it. I kind of go into it open-minded, open-eyed, obviously open-walleted, because if you choose to support a small business, then you're also, I think, to a degree, accepting whatever their price point is. Like that's really what it comes down to. You have to you go in, there's sort of like just levels of naivete or trust or being informed. But if they're saying this is what it costs for me to make this thing out of my house or out of my small scale storefront, like this is what it costs. And you have to risk the disappointment or the disillusionment in order to know whether or not it was a good decision, right? There's only so much research you can do before you got to take the dive. So I looked at their price point. So this donut company, I will say I want to do one thing first. There's a company that I tried to get donuts from, and it's called New City Donuts, and they work out of Mount Albert. And I got donuts from them. Geez, I don't know if it was just this past summer or it was in the spring. And I thought I had found apple fritter. I did. Sorry, I found apple fritter excellence there. That's my thing. We've talked about this. I don't know why. I get it partially from my dad. My dad was an apple fritter, uh, Dutchy donut guy. He's sometimes like the chocolate cruller, the chocolate walnut cruller, the crunch. I think you've called it. That was his thing. So I've got that stuck in my brain. Is the apple fritter is like the pinnacle of donut craftspersonship, and I like him. So I got them from New City. I reached out to New City on Facebook. So the reasons for me getting donuts, you and I talked about the dad details. I felt like my fam had kind of a little bit of a hard week, everyone in their own way, challenging week. Like, you know what? I'm going to surprise them with donuts. I'm just going to do this thing. And that worked out fantastically because I executed, made it happen, got the donuts, got it home in a good time. And everyone's like, donuts. And without asking anybody what they needed, I got the right ones. So I did the same thing with New City the last time. Sadness, when I reached out to New City, they're not in business right now. They're hoping to reopen. So their site and profile is still active on Facebook, and they're trying, from the messaging back and forth, they're looking to reopen. So that'll be, stay tuned. So then I'm like, okay, there's got to be somewhere else that's doing donuts. And there's a mini donut place in Aurora that I've tried. It was okay for me. I'm thinking I might need to go. I was there when they first opened, and there's always, you want to be optimized when you open this business because sometimes it can be one shot, one time, and that's it. They're still in business. So I'm assuming they got the kinks out because people are loving them. And I'm like, so I may go back there, mini donuts. The other one that was suggested is this company I got from. And right away, you and I roll with the decoded kind of food crawl. And every time we go and we check out different restos, the food is only one part of it. Being able to talk to the owners, like, we're doing some ridiculous little passion project of like our own little mini food network, but we're talking with the owners. And it's awesome because I think in many of the cases, these are small business owners. We've been fortunate to hear some really deep kind of cultural connection stories about how the food is connected to their family, to the place where they've come from. Many have been racialized individuals, small business owners that are just rocking their traditional foods, which is amazing. And they talk to us like, come on, like you sit there and you're tasting the thing and they're telling you the story about the thing and how it was handed down from grandmother thing. And, oh yeah, by the way, granny's in the back still doing the thing. You're like, come on. Like you can't get a better story connection to the food. So I think even in this kind of ridiculous, where we're still trying to figure out how do we make connection with people coming out of COVID, our Zoom life, our sort of online teaching, it can be done. It takes a little bit more work, but I'm finding people are more than willing to trust their stories to you if you're open and you listen. So I pull into this plaza to pick up these donuts and I'm looking around and I don't see any donut shop. I know this spot in Newmarket. I know of it. I've been in that area before. I knew of this plaza before, so I knew I was kind of in the right address spot. It wasn't I was like out in the back 40 somewhere, like where the hell am I? So I was in a spot that I knew, but I look around, I'm like, I don't, where am I going to get these donuts from? And then I kind of recalled, it came back to mind that as I ordered the donuts, they asked, what does your vehicle look like? And that kind of came back to mind. I'm like, well, I was trying to connect the dots, like why that? I'm like, maybe someone's gonna like they're watching for me. I don't know. It just comes with the back of my mind. And then I look in my side view mirror where I pulled up. There's a dude, big smile, walking up with this big box out in front of him, like just right into the mirror, getting closer and closer into the mirror with the box. And dude's name is Glenn. And he's like, here you go, here are your donuts. Are you Chris? Yeah, I'm Chris. He's like, I said, fantastic. I said, just before you go, please tell me about the name. Like how, like, so the name of the company is Jazerts. Jusserts. Jazerts. I'm like, dude, like what just desserts? What's that? He said, well, that was part of the starting point, but there's already a company called Just Desserts. But the other part of it is that it's his spouse's business. He's the delivery guy. They don't want to hassle their neighborhood, so they just use this as a pickup spot. So they'll set up the times. He'll come over in the van and have all the orders there ready to pick up. I'll assume he's made peace with the business owners there. Like it's not a hassle. It's on their webpage, so they must have been doing it for a while. And I'm like, okay, tell me what the name is. He said, well, originally they wanted to, the spouse wanted to have like a juice bar bakery, but they haven't been able to open the storefront. So he just kind of said, okay, juice, desserts, can't get just desserts. Let's just do desserts. I'm like, dude, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. He said, yeah. And he said, it's just kind of stuck. So here we are, the donut episode. That's the story of desserts. And I will say on the front end, their donuts are delicious.
I love it. And I did enjoy some of the Red Eye Cafe donuts yesterday with my family.
Of
They were
course.
they were pretty pumped. But it's funny because kids came home and they're like, "What are these?" I'm like, "Don't touch them. I need some for the podcast." They're like, "Okay." Then Sarah came home and I'm like, "I have donuts." And I'm like, "But some are for the podcast. So please, nobody eat any until I get a chunk of the ones that I Chris asked me to take a look at." They're like, "Okay." So then
They're
I'm
like,
there.
oh, that guy again.
Yeah.
That guy again impacting our family fun.
So I cut the chunks of the ones that you suggested, and then they had at it, and it was great. I mean, they're happy, right? And Sarah's like, this was hilarious. My wife's like, when were you in Cambridge? And I look at her, I'm like, I spent my whole day in Cambridge. Like, it was just funny how she was like, I'm like, I spent my whole day in Cambridge. Then I came, then I was in Kitchener and Waterloo, but it was like the most of the day was spent in Cambridge. And I was like, well, on my way out of town, I stopped, I grabbed them and kept going, right? But it was just funny. When were you in Cambridge? Like, I never go there. I'm like, I spend half my life there. But anyway, before we dig in, Dominique said edu anarchy. That's a great term. I do like it too. And then props to me, a little bit of a humble brag here. Rochelle says, so true. Chris Rowland is a wonderful person for the work he's doing. Thanks, Rochelle. I appreciate that. I'll say you're one of the people that you and I tend to get along. So I appreciate you saying some positive things about me. I suspect there's a handful of people that might not agree with you.
Roland?
Guess what?
Yeah, they're like Roland?
I don't care. That's the beauty of this life. But anyway,
That's
okay.
the anarchy, baby.
That's the chaos. Bring it on. I've gotten used to it now, Chris. I've gotten used to chaos and conflict. It's like just bring it. Just bring it. And if you have half a mind, you will see that my heart is open. My ears are open, my eyes are open. I'm not just talking out of my rear end. I'm open in all these places so I can try to help. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Okay, donut time, bro.
Okay.
What are we gonna do? How do you want to do this?
You go, dude. You.
Okay, listen. I got to start with this fritter. Now,
Okay.
I want people to remember this was purchased yesterday afternoon, so
Mhm.
it's a day old, which I don't mind. You and I have talked about day olds. We do not mind
We do not.
because they're a little bit firmer. I don't mind a firm donut, so I'm okay with that. Let's see how this thing held up. So initially, I taste the glaze. I like
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
It's not very appley. Like I'm not getting
Mhm.
a huge hit of apple.
Okay.
More cinnamon than anything else, and it's firm. It doesn't look like there are any apple chunks in it. So um, there is some. I know how much you like the crust around it.
Yep.
There is like a
Yep.
crusty. I'm gonna taste the crusty. No, I like that. It reminds me of the Lady Glaze crust.
Mhm.
A lot more glaze on that section. It's not bad. It's not bad. Like it's not. It's not rocking my socks, but
Mhm.
it's a nice taste this morning.
So is it like
Do you have any questions? Because I'm sure I could answer your questions, but
so tell me about the density.
it's dense. It's dense, but not like rock hard.
Mhm.
You
Because
get
I
what I'm
like that.
saying?
Yeah, I like that how you mentioned the Lady Glaze, because Lady Glaze does a really good job of the crust. They do a really good job on the flavor profile. It hits on the cinnamon. Um, I think they're when I had it, I liked it. For me, the apple chunks were too big. They were too big. So, like, I'm not a big fan of just having one big bite of just dough and then one big bite of apple. So, I don't know. Make your donut however you friggin' want. But I mean, like, I like a blend. I like it so it's kind of you can get a little bit of bite in each thing.
So when I took the big bite, I
Yeah.
tasted no apple, just
That would make me sad.
dough and cinnamon. Now, mind you, it's a quarter piece. I guess maybe if you're eating the whole thing, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all.
Good argument for distribution there, though. Making sure that there's right? Like, and I
Yeah.
know when you're doing, I mean, because there's different consistencies of batter, right? I get that. There's different consistencies, and some when you dump into the fryer, they hold,
Mm.
like, and then there's others that kind of they're a little bit more like oh, what's that called? Funnel cake style. And that I do not like funnel cake in general, but I like the elements of funnel cake in my apple fritter. Can I show mine?
Yes, please.
Okay, so right off. So this is from Desserts. You can see this is a low profile fritter.
It
Like
is.
it's not very high at all, right? That makes me happy because I will say being a bearded a bearded a beardo, if the donut's too big, I'm not a fan of that stuff falling out of my beard later. I like to be able to get my mouth around a donut. I am. Same for the most part, a burger too. Like I'm a burger squasher. I can admit I'm even like a burger cutter and quarters kind of guy. I'll do that. I'll do that. So, anyways, low profile. I'll show the crust. Oops, there you can see. There's crust on that. Both sides. There's crust on that. And I will tell you, can you see the dimpling on it? How it's like bubbly, like bumpy.
I
That's
can.
critical too. Yeah, that's critical for me too. So one of the things that these folks claim is that they use a brioche dough. They like to do a brioche dough. So that's a dough that has butter and eggs in it. And when you do that, if you've ever had, do you know? Have you had brioche before? You ever had it? Yeah, so you've got it, right? Anyone out there having this kind of style? Like if you've ever got my kids like to take like challah bread is close to that kind of brioche kind of consistency. Very tender, slightly sweet. If you my son calls it sharing bread, right? Where you can kind of pull it apart. That sort of like stretchy skin on it is really nice. And you butter that stuff up and you're just in heaven. So, anyways, right away, day old. The glaze flakes up beautifully. And it's one of the things that sometimes really chaves me when something's glazed is that it feels like it's been dipped in water. I'm not a fan of that. I want to see this. See that? That's the snow, baby. That's the snow. That's the flaky glaze that just comes off in little pieces. If I do nothing with that, an hour later, it's still going to look like that. It's still going to sit in these little crispy bits. And I can even just kind of like take my fingers, flick them, and it falls off. I love that. That's a good glaze for me. I'm getting apple. It's light. It's very light. I think part of it is the portion size and it's low profile, right? One of my things that I don't like with fritters sometimes, actually often, Lady Glaze with their despite the fact they have the best crust, they have an amazing crust on their fritter. It almost like sometimes feels like you're eating a cookie, like a cookie at the same time as a donut, but they're really heavy. The Lady Glaze fritter is a heavy friggin' donut. Um, this is light. I get apple, I get cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla. The actual brioche cake of it is airy, and I can show it to you on a different donut. But check this. This is another one I get. Do you see that hole there? That's one of the other donuts that I got. I'll talk about in a bit. That type of airiness is in the fritter. Makes it a very light, punchy flavor. Cinnamon, sugar, the snow on the fingers. I love it. I love it. I found excellence. I'm gonna have another bite.
As you talk about the snow on the finger, I've literally, since I've eaten the fritter, I've been like trying to rub the snow off, and there's just a little bits that just won't come off. I kind of
Some
like.
of it won't. Some of it won't. But when you see those snowflakes, and it's still, I can see it's like little shingles all over it. It's delicious. I'm gonna finish it.
Go for it, bro.
Mhm.
While you do that, Richard Resendez, who is a member of the Book Club for Men and a WCDSB Awesome VP, says educhaos on the daily. Need to breathe through it with a plan. And yeah, bro, I know you'd know because I'm in and out of the buildings. And not only do I experience the chaos, anarchy in my work, I see it in the buildings as I'm going from place to place, and it's nuts. In my opinion, dude, something's changed. Something has changed dramatically, drastically. It just seems every school is just like it's nonstop. It's just nonstop with issues all day. I don't remember it
Can I
being that way when I started.
can I lean on Richard's comment there?
Yes.
A plan is nice, but that doesn't help with educhaos. Because if we accept like chaos, if we accept that right now chaos is a natural phenomenon that emerges as a result of humans trying to be in the same space, trying to do the same work, humans depending on each other. I don't know. Okay, so he's got, two things here. Need to breathe and have a plan. Need to breathe and have a plan. Two things in the statement. I would lean more on the first part than I would on the second part. Because if we accept that the educate and this is like, I don't know if we were doing this in the on ramp. I don't even remember now. But earlier in the conversation, it's your ability to navigate the immediacy that is the tiring thing, the emotional. The moment you have a plan, it allows you that distance. It allows you to say, well, that the thing that's happening in front of me has to go through these checkpoints first before I deal directly with it. And that sometimes can be frustrating when the chaos that's in front of you needs a response. And often I find that response, you can't grab a plan. Yes, you can grab your breathing. Yes, you can grab your habits. Yes, you can grab your talent. You may or may not grab your skill because the skill is part of planning. The talents that you've sort of grown in EDU is what's going to be a part of that response immediately to educhaos. And I would say dealing with the immediacy needs improvisation. It needs grace. It needs breathing. It needs community. It needs time. It needs, I'll go another way, money. It needs mobility. It needs these things that you can't put those on a plan, but you somehow have to activate them in the moment. So is it worse? Is stuff more? I think for some people, they're floating through the chaos exactly as they did pre-COVID teaching, COVID teaching, and now. They've just kind of like lily pad to lily pad to lily pad to lily pad. I think for others, being involved and being in the moment and really being present the last 2 years, it's changed how they do education. And I think if you've allowed some of those changes in and reflected on how to do differently, then you're aware of the chaos. You're in a different profile. You're aware of the chaos. You're stopping at that edge of the lily pad and assessing whether or not you need to actually jump in the water. Like, you're not going according to the plan. Could somebody replicate some of the stuff that you're doing in your re-engagement? Maybe. Maybe. But I don't know if you're necessarily, I think you and I have talked about a little bit, like, how is what you're doing now leading to whoever picks up the ball after you? I would almost argue the best thing for the best thing that could happen for the next person taking over your position is for them to somehow still have access to all the resources that you've cracked open, but they can't follow your plan. Now, the school will want them to. Whatever successes you have, if they build into formal protocols, the rigidity of what you do in re-engagement, it's going to be more rigid for the next person. I think that's just how the system self-corrects. I think there's a certain amount of permission you have right now to break new ground, to take new paths, to have conversations that the chaos, like, at some point, the self-correction methods within the system is going to say, let's build a plan. I think, unfortunately, I think the downside to that is that also builds in a rigidity that likely will support EDU better than it will the kid that's on fire in front of you that day. And if the person coming in only has access to the plan or believes that they only have access to the plan, I think the particular version of education that you're navigating, I think the risk of formalizing the plans, and I get the account, and I get I'm also challenging accountability here. But I think the risk assessment, I think when we talk about risk assessment, I think sometimes we have to talk about risk assessment and mitigating risk while looking at the formalized plans that the school tell us we need to do. Often we're going to say the improviser is going to be looked at as, well, we need to risk assess how you're operating here, Chids. Like, really? You're going to do that thing? I think the cool pushback is like, I know exactly the risk if I don't do it. I know we prepared because we can't look away from it now. You're now the glue that says we can't look away from this moment. We can't. So breathe, yes. Plan, maybe.
I think it's something. I appreciate your perspective. I think it would be great if Richard gave us more, because I don't mind the word plan. But I'll tell you, in my work, plans change. The plans change as quickly as the chaos is happening. And I think me creating plans or collaborating with people to create plans is because it makes people feel better that there's a plan, whether it's going to work or not. There's direction, there's a focus. Because sometimes they'll say, well, what about this? I'm like, I don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, I don't know. I this I'm confident in using um, those three words together in some instances. I don't know. That's an unknown, and so let's push here or poke there, or do whatever to see what happens. So I get your perspective. I think it would be great to talk to Richard in an extended fashion, because I'd love to hear more about his perspective. Um,
I think part of the way to tease that out is exactly what you just said. Under what circumstances are we permitted to say, do we feel we're permitted to say, I don't know? What is the risk of somebody that's in formal leadership saying, I don't know? What's the risk of someone that's in we're all informal leader. I mean, you're a teacher, you're in formal leadership. When I'm talking about MIN system, like let's say outside the classroom, an individual that's sort of outside the class. Forget it. Let's do it the other way. The teacher, everybody's included in this comment. What's the risk? What are the risks, actual and perceived, of saying, I don't know? What are the risks, actual and perceived? And when I say actual, we need evidence. Perceived, evidence of your emotional state. But actual would be understanding the rules, the laws, the regulations, OCT, blah, 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 everything that happens outside your head. Those are two very powerful bookends to this moment. So what are the risks of saying, I don't know? When you're all alone, what are the risks of saying, I don't know, in your classroom? So to your kids. What are the risks to saying I don't know? And I get stakeholders, complexity of problem. Sure. These can all be different levels of challenge. I've never been in a meeting. I have never been in a meeting with individuals that are in leadership positions outside of my school. I haven't once ever heard, and I'm going to say, I'm going to kind of put them in positional leadership, as in they are kind of there to lead me somewhere. I'll just put it that they're there to lead me somewhere. So our interdisciplinary team or any of the consultants, I have never experienced in a meeting an individual in that space say, I don't know. And what I mean when I say that, I don't know, not with the I don't know with the sudden caveat of, but I'll look into it and get back to you, where they just honest drop, I don't know. And then you kind of sit in that whatever that noise is at that moment. Is it your watch ticking? Is it your heart beating? Is it your sudden breath, like you're stressed? Like, well, what are we going to do then? What are we going to do? Is it just the screaming into the void? Like we hit this point every time. But in that silence, after saying, I don't know, is a really powerful catalyst for someone's got to say to do something differently. Like, because that's kind of where we're at. And several times this school year, I have reached our edge of action or our edge of knowledge or our edge of perception. I've done it with a few students too. Student was really stressed out. They weren't completing an assessment in a way that they did. And they're kind of looking at you in this moment like, can you help me? But the only help at that point would be to give them the answer. Like they just don't have the tools to kind of sculpt it or mold it themselves. Lots of different reasons, but they just can't take it to that next step. They can't take it all the way to the equal sign. And I've said to them, it's okay not to know. I think you've reached the edge of your knowledge. And the look on their face is like, what do you no, like no, like we have to have an answer. So I think the risk in, let's say, what Richard is saying is that we have to have the answer. And I'm starting to back away like, no, we don't. I think we have to have a process to help. We have a process to figure out when we don't know the answer. And I think we need to support individuals when they reach that edge and how they're feeling leading up to saying, I don't know. I don't know. I love the fact that you're saying it. When you say it, I get the vibe of it. I don't know because you're being pragmatic. I actually don't have an answer for you right now. But me knowing you personally, you're doing work away from that to kind of figure out something. So I know that I suspect, I believe that about you. But saying I don't know in these meetings, I think it's now become critically important because we have so many plans that seem to work sometimes. And I think we get in the mindset that if this plan doesn't work, well, let's shift to this plan. And then we look to others to say, well, what about your plan? I don't believe we give enough time to that moment and the energy of saying, I don't know.
I wrote a blog post about it, and one of the points in my blog post was about faking it till you make it and how much I dislike that saying. I
Mhm.
dislike that saying. That is dangerous. I see that as danger now. Fake it until you make it. How about you just say you don't know and you're working on it because you're in a new position or a new role or there's a new problem that you're working on? I have more respect for people who do that. Now, if I run into an individual who's constantly doesn't know anything, then that's a problem. And I do run into those people where they
Yeah.
never know anything. It's like, how are you doing this job if you know nothing? Right? Um, but I do run into those. I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Roland. I'm like, that's the 80th time you said that to me this week. You don't. It's like you know nothing. And then there are people who, because of positional leadership or whatever, have to pretend like they know. It's like I know
Well,
you
I've
don't know.
I've heard that one as well. So what's this gonna look like? That's an interesting cover up for I don't know. So there's a particular problem in front of you, challenge in front of you. You're trying to figure out what to do next, and you jump right to, well, what's this problem gonna look like? I guess now that we've had this conversation, now that you've said you're going to try these things, so what is this moment going to look like when the problem presents itself again? And 2 times this past year, the person saying it, I actually thought to myself, um, I said, well, on one of the occasions, I said it's going to look exactly the same because we have no new resources to help this particular person. And the look on that person's face was like that's not what they were looking to hear. But in the other occasion, I thought to myself, you have no clue. And I don't mind that you have no clue, but I feel like you're baiting me into committing to something that just won't be true. So what is this going to look like? Like you're trying to get me to itemize what my steps are going to be because you have to account for the steps I'm going to take. That's not dealing with educhaos.
I've learned to push back on
Yeah, I'm starting to too.
the people that try to put me in a situation to get something off their plate and onto mine. I push back now, big time, and they know, the smart ones know, they can't just do that to me. They're gonna, when they come at me now, they're more prepared. Um, they bring something to the table rather than just, hey, Roland, and they think they're like, they think they're tricking me into doing something. I'm like, you're not tricking me. I know exactly what you're doing, and I'm not falling for it. Until you do this, this, and this, I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. So do your part, and then I'm happy to do my part.
And the risk, I think, and the other thing I'll say to Richard, I don't I think our affirmations, I think our affirmations and the tropey sayings that we have within education are so deeply kind of rooted in the way that we operate. I mean, think about this, think about if what's is it the 10,000 hours number, you know, that the idea to get to mastery on something. And but that 10,000 hours of mastery is also like that phrase, stare long enough into the void and you'll start to realize the void stares back into you. You realize that there's something relational there. So this idea that we gain mastery over a craft like teaching and being in EDU, we don't often acknowledge how relational that is. That the better we believe we get at education, we're also creating a silo in our own mind where the things that we're learning from education make us do things. Like we're not in absolute control of our skill sets within education. We are a bundle of memories and habits and triggers and cues and cravings that, whether we believe the system is doing it to us intentionally, we've created grooves in our own brain. So sometimes we say things and do things that, unless someone kind of goes, wait a second. So what you're saying is, unless you get somebody that's kind of like rattling your cage a little bit, I think we can say things like breathe and have a plan, which I don't fundamentally disagree with. But like you said, I would like to hear a little bit more about what does that look like practically and what's the evidence? Like, I feel like that's the emotional response that I would tell myself. That's the affirmation that we would tell somebody else that was struggling. But I also feel like it's the affirmation from the system that has mastery over us, not us over it. And, you know, we've talked about this from a different perspective where we know we know we know from experiences, I know from experiences, the challenge of becoming, let's say, an administrator in the board. And right now, you know, from some observations, it's really challenging to be that person because there's a lot of different policies coming in, a lot of different expectations, a lot of sort of moving timelines. There's a lot of pieces there, which I get can be just the job. But some of the conversations that you and I have had, and Ramona, we've had when, you know, the other pod, our dormant pod, about, you know, talking to administrators and formal leaders, there's a whole wellness and lived experience thing that when we look at the actual idea, if we take the idea that we're masters of that chaos in some way, the major trap you can fall into is like that one person we talked to who thought they were at the top of their game and they were taken out by mental wellness stuff. And that's the exact, like, the more steely you become, believing that you are in control of your craft in EDU, it's equally mindful to remember that with that comes the exact same mastery over you by the system. And it's you have to choose to be there, right? I'm not saying love the job, hate the job, whatever it is. For me, that's just become fact. So again, when I read the affirmation from Richard, I want the details. Let's flash that out practically. And if we get to a wall, let's say I don't know. I don't know. And let's leave on that. Was it Singleton's rules? Let's leave in the abstract that it's not going to be closure on this. I know that's for a different application, but I think that's the heart of challenging conversations, whether they're about race or cultural centeredness, whatever we're sort of doing, equity. But it can also just apply looking at our career and how we help kids. Leave it has to be open ended right now because we don't know.
Thank you.
Donuts.
Don't back to the donuts. Can we go back?
Yeah, do it.
The next donut is the maple peanut crunch. I have to tell
Mm.
you, I am biased against this donut.
Okay. Okay.
So here it is. It's got maple glaze and then like a chocolate dripping with
Yeah.
actual nuts on it. I'm not a fan of nuts on a donut. Not a fan at all.
I'll
And
say me neither.
normally I don't buy maple donuts either. My wife likes
Mhm.
them. I don't.
I like maple. While you're chewing, I like maple. I think this is why. Okay, so here's the thing. Day old. I heard the crunch. I heard that. I heard the peanut crunch. So it's delivering on at least one part of its title. I do like maple. I've grown to kind of like maple. I would be just as prone to get like a Boston cream as I would. Tim Hortons has a maple glazed one, and I do like that one. So, despite the bias, where's this one taking you, bro?
I have to tell you,
Do it because it's only you and me.
despite the bias, those three things go well together.
They
They
do,
really
eh?
do. They
Wait,
really
even
do.
the chocolate?
Oh yeah,
I was okay. Can you taste the chocolate? Can you taste 3 components? Do you get 3 components?
I do. Now I will say that the nuts are not as crunchy as they probably were yesterday, and I prefer
Mhm,
that. I prefer that because they get stuck in your teeth and stuff. It's a good tasting donut. And again, day old, I appreciate that the dough is firmer. It's a good
mhm.
donut. I it's one of the it's like popcorn, and I'll explain.
Hmm,
I
do it.
never if somebody says you want popcorn, I say no. But the minute I stick my hand in their popcorn and take a bite, I'm like, I want more. So it's one of those things where initially I'm like, no. But once it gets in my mouth, I'm like, more, more, more. So I cheated yesterday. I had some of this yesterday. It's better today. It's better today. I like it. The three flavors go really well together. I like it.
Cool. How's the, so compared to we both bought from the same what about the dough of the nut? What are you thinking of as far as the actual yeah.
I like it. It's good. It's not again, it's not so dense that it's heavy.
Mhm,
But it's in the middle. It's not really light either. It's right in the
gotcha.
middle, and because it's day old, I feel like there's a little bit more density to it, a little bit more pushback, but I do not mind that at all. But when I ate some of this yesterday, it was fluffier, and I didn't
Mhm,
mind that at all. I didn't mind
mhm.
that at all. So there's my
Yeah,
review of the maple
I
peanut
like it.
crunch.
It's one of those things, like, with donuts, donuts in particular, is the actual dough a standalone or in service to the toppings? AKA, like for me, I have memories. So I'll do this in a totally different vein. If you were to speak to, I encourage anyone that's listening, survey different people in your crew, and you can do this with rice, you can do this with um you can do this with rice. You can tell me you can do it with pasta. You can do it with I'm doing a lot of carb kind of based things. You could probably do it with potato. You could do it with other starches. And if you were to put the question to the and you're talking to the right person if the answer you get is, "Oh, no, there's a difference." And the question you've just asked is, "Really? Spaghetti? Penne? What's the difference?" Right? To someone on the inside of receiving story, family, emotion, sustenance, culture, community, love through that particular food item, they're going to tell you, because there are some food rules. So if we talk pasta, there are food rules, right? You do a short hollow pasta, it's because you're expecting the sauce to go inside that pasta. You do a long pasta, it's because you're choosing a sort of sauce that just kind of clings to the outside of the pasta. Like there's actual, you can kind of go technical rules that get into the culinary. You ask someone the difference between two different companies of pasta, I would hope you get the story as to why one is different. You might get the one why is better, but you might get one that's different. So you do that rice, potato, whatever. And so often with donuts, and I actually have no idea point of origin for this particular thing. I don't know. German. I don't know. Like the first donut. Maybe someone else can look into that. So I often think to myself, how is the actual cake or bread part of it in service to itself, as in standalone, as in it tastes good, and then the toppings. One of the particularities with me, like if you ask me about different uses of potato or cabbage and different kinds of cabbage, my ancestry informs me. And I can tell you how certain you do cabbage in different ways, right? And someone's like, it all tastes like cabbage. I'm like, oh no, that tastes different. When it comes to bread, I'm of a particular mind of when I think of like a ham and cheese sandwich, it's a very particular kind of ham, it's a very particular kind of cheese, and it also exists on rye bread. That's what's in my head. The bread can stand alone. Each of those items can stand alone. As a synthesis of an experience, the rye bread with the ham and the cheese and a horseradish mustard is the pinnacle. They're all meant to be together. You figure out those flavors. So
back to edu-chaos. I'm liking this back and forth. Rochelle says you can have the plan, but then there's what really happens because we are humans working with other humans. And then Richard jumps in. Thanks, Richard. Richard says, I don't see a plan as something fixed or a checklist. I see it more what we need to do and reflect. Can't be fixed. Try, adapt, reflect. Thanks for
I think this what I think and this is not to sort of pull hope from the calculus on this. I'm not looking to pull hope. But I think there's also really that sort of what was his 3-step? Try, adapt, reflect. I like the can't be fixed. So I'd love to sort of that moment of can't be fixed. I'm pointing at the screen like everyone here is watching me, but that moment of can't be fixed, those are the fly on the wall moments that I love to be in. Because I agree with the 3-step he said after that. But I feel like, if you say it can't be fixed, personal reflection is good. Try is good. One of the things I like to introduce in that moment where it can't be fixed, I say, this is where it kind of led to me, this other comment I've made to you before. And I've said this in student success meetings where it feels like how the group is going to measure the wellness of this kid is whether or not they're sitting in a classroom learning literacy or numeracy. And I try and sort of like chop right through the middle of that. That's my sound that's the cleaver sound. Chop it in half and say, well, what if curriculum is not what this kid needs? So if we take curriculum off the table, can school still offer this kid something? And that's a moment where we realize it can't be fixed by is either the current offerings within school. So how do we change in school as a system? Or we don't have the right relationships outside of school when everyone at the table is saying this kid needs this thing that is through the local hospital, or this kid needs this thing that's through, I'm picking really broad. They need this thing for this social group. They need this thing for a big brother. They need this thing so, and then to be able to say, okay, we can't fix it. Now we need to sort of get connections with somebody else to help us. So I like the reflective practice. I just don't want the reflective practice to become kaleidoscopic, where we think we actually have more experience to help the kid than we do. So we can reflect and to be a reflective practitioner. But I also think you and I have talked about this idea of active reflective practice, where blog all you friggin' want. But if your blog only accounts for what you've done in the past and doesn't hold you accountable to try something next in the future, then really that reflective practice only benefits you. And that's, I know some teachers are even like, reflective practice? What's that? I'm fine. Okay, we can help you understand that. And then what? Post it up so other people can see it. That idea of committing to the community. I get that. But one of the things I've learned with habits and action is that a major component of that is to not only ideation, the reflective part, which we do as humans, for better for worse, it's to then write it down and then to share it with someone that will come back and say, what are you doing with that? And you want to have the community that holds you accountable in a way that you can't look away from that challenge. I would even dare say you feel shame for the fact that your ego only let you reflect on it, post it up to get the likes, and it didn't actually take you to a new space. So I get it. Catharsis, you get your thoughts out, good, you feel better. Now what? And I like to sort of lean against that as well. I wish more, I'd be honest, I wish I knew, and I go looking. I actually am tempted at the next staff meeting or to start doing it one-to-one. I think I'm gonna start approaching all my staff members and ask them, do you reflect anywhere? Do you do writing where you post it up? I think I want to do that. I think I want to sort of dig into locally. You and I talked about this before too, how weird it kind of is. Like, do you remember a time, and it still doesn't happen as much as you think it would, where a leader in the system stands up at a meeting or something and starts with, I was reading this thing on Twitter the other day. It just doesn't happen, right? And not for better. I don't. I'm not even saying whether or not what that person is about to say is good or bad, but it does clearly indicate that they're looking elsewhere for cues apart from what's in the building. And I think that's a good example of where you say, I don't know, I can't fix this. So you step out and you're like, okay, I'm getting outside my box. So sorry, you're going to jump in on something. Richard's lit me up. Thanks, Richard. I appreciate it. That, and this is my third coffee.
Oh, jeez. You're
I
gonna
know.
be binkying all day.
I'm beyond binking.
So many places I want to go, but I'm not because of the time. You talk about,
Should I do one more donut while you're chatting?
yeah.
You introduce a new topic, I'll take a taste. So this one I'll just say is a salted caramel,
Ah,
vanilla salted caramel donut. So it's a straight up white donut, but this is the one I want to point out. Look at that brioche factor. Can you see
mm,
that air bubble?
I can see
So
it.
yeah. So there won't be much of a crust on this one, I expect, but I'll do the flavor test here.
So as your flavor testing, curriculum, sometimes the student does not need curriculum at that moment in time. And I think everybody's scared to say it. Everybody's scared to say it because school is all about curriculum. I believe it's about so much more. I believe I've seen school as the safest place for kids to be recently. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Maybe that'll happen another time. But this business of like we need to keep shoving curriculum into these humans where they are living in chaos. Um, I'm sorry, curriculum's the last thing on their mind. You shove too hard, that's it. They stop coming back, and it's like there's tension between my role and the traditional role of the school, especially for people who do not want to try to think outside the box. Before I let you talk about the donut, Rochelle said, sometimes school's the place where chaos doesn't happen. It's their stable place. I agree, but I also see, and I'm not disagreeing, I'm just adding a layer that sometimes school is also, it is the place where chaos doesn't happen, but then there's layers, social layers, um, body language layers that affect students in negative ways, and so they still don't go, even though they know that that's a place where the chaos, it won't be as crazy, but there are other layers stopping them from going, which upsets me because I'm like, are you guys for real? The kid will come, but you're doing these things to the kid, and the kid won't come now because of those things. So just wanted to put it out there.
Before I'll do the donut, my challenge to Rochelle would be, do you give the same considered weight to the statement? Can you put the statement back up for me just so I can get the wording right? Sometimes school is the place where chaos doesn't happen. It's their stable place. So for Rochelle, do you give as equal, and anyone else listening, do you give as equal weight and consideration to sometimes school is the place where chaos does happen and it's not their stable place? And I appreciate the counter thinking. Because I would even add to this that, like, can we start to look at student success with the dual lens of school can be incredibly helpful in promoting and supporting student success at the same time that we say school can be incredibly traumatic and harmful to student success. I think the dissonance that happens there keeps us honest. Yeah, I think it keeps us clear. I think it keeps us away from affirmations and that somehow belief that someone at the table is going to take care of this. And again, I'm not being I this is not me jaded, and it doesn't keep me it sounds slightly jaded. I think this is me being absolutely tactical, because I have had meetings where I realized the individuals that I thought that I invited that had something to offer only had something to say. And then I realize I shouldn't have invited these individuals. Or I know that the next time I've actually said that to some people on my team. They're like, okay, this person has to be at the meeting. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not inviting them this time. They're like, why? I'm like, because the last time it felt like it was just a carbon copy. It was a CC line on an email. They actually did not offer value when we sort of encountered this last time. They're like, well, basically then it's kind of like, do we give them a second chance to kind of talk about them? I'm like, well, I'll let you do that research, but I don't think I need them at this meeting. I'm going to sort of search out other people that I think are better. And I like that Rochelle's saying yes, because that is also true. So if we accept that, and I get that it depends on the meeting you're in, but I also like to kind of dispel the fact that, and from my experience, that school works for everybody. That's sort of been my experience. It's because I know it just doesn't. Hence my sometimes. Absolutely. So this whole conversation reminds me of this donut that I just ate. It doesn't. That's a total clumsy transition.
Do it though. Do it.
But here's maybe how I can connect it. My expectations were not met with that donut. I'll go in reverse order. The actual donut part of it, the cake part of it, delicious. It was buttery. It was light. It almost had a little bit of a croissant kind of action going on there, but not quite there. Not quite there. It was still soft, kind of melt in your mouth action. I think this is a scenario where this might be kind of trendy, but it didn't hit. It didn't land. So it's kind of like you go to Tim Hortons, you get a chocolate donut. You're like, okay, it's chocolate, it's a donut, but nothing memorable. So that particular donut, the salted caramel, there was definitely not enough salt in it. Definitely not enough salt in it. It had a good flavor. What I did like about the caramel, you ever had like good caramel, if you make it from like in a pot as opposed to like a squeeze tube when you buy it, you're basically cooking sugar. Like that's what caramel comes from. And the actual color comes from one of the stages of cooking, raw sugar to that state. In the process of doing that, you get a little bit of smoky flavor, a little bit of woody flavor, sometimes even a little bit of a chocolate flavor, depending on it. You get sweet notes. You get wood smoke on it. Like it's nice. Like a well-made caramel has that a little bit of the bitterness on it. That caramel was all sweet. And unfortunately, the icing on it was a little bit like a Danish icing, like a Danish, you buy a Danish and it's like that thick white icing all the way around it, or like a coffee bun, coffee. So no, what's it called? Not a Danish. What's the other one? Coffee bun?
Cinnamon bun?
Yeah, like a cinnamon bun, like that kind of a topping. It was sort of thick like that, so it didn't get the flakiness. And because the caramel topping didn't have enough other contrast to it, like the smokiness or the saltiness, it was just like sweet all the way down. Now, better than a Tim Hortons version of the same, little bit. But as far as the product that would make me enjoy it and go back, I think I needed the more saltiness. The other part that was kind of what was good, it was almost great, but it was good. When you do a caramel sauce, I like it when it gets kind of stretchy, like toffee like. You know what I mean? So when you bite into it, it almost feels like you bite it, and a good caramel sauce for me, if you were to bite something and pull, you'd get a pull on it like cheese. And all that would be is just like the stretchiness of that caramel sauce on top. Like it doesn't want to, it's like, no, don't let go of the donut. Like it didn't happen. So it did not meet the expectations.
What was the name of that donut?
That was the salted caramel, vanilla salted caramel donut.
Thank you.
You're welcome, dude.
Okay, next donut is the eggnog.
This
Now,
one, I will say, out of any of them, bro, I was excited for.
okay,
I was excited for.
there was liquid in the middle,
Okay.
so I'm gonna taste that stuff.
All right.
Oh, it's a high powered sweet shot of eggnog flavor. It's
So
good.
as you're eating this, I want to let me lay down what I would be. Oh, go. Don't. What?
Okay, before I'm just saying because I'm gonna mute and bite in. It's not beard friendly. It's got this good
Yeah.
like meringue on top.
Yeah.
It's gonna end up all over me. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
mute this and take a bite. But the inside does taste like sugary eggnog.
Okay. So here's the thing. One of the things I've really come to appreciate about eggnog is the spiciness of it. Like I got to get a hit of sometimes cinnamon, sometimes nutmeg. I've even had eggnog that has like an allspice flavor to it, which is really complex and cool. That's an amazing flavor. The second part to it is that eggnog naturally for me leads me, and this is funny how like a flavor can lead you to another flavor. Good eggnog to me automatically makes me want to drink rum. It leads me to want alcohol. So I like that. And that breeds that brings up the whole dopamine spike again, right? Like the expectation, like, oh, that eggnog was good, but definitely my next cup, glug, 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 I'm putting some spiced rum in it. So there were different layers to this donut. It looked like it had stuff, not beard friendly. The salted caramel was it was low profile. It was beard friendly. You can kind of eat it, just grab it and eat it. How'd this one treat you? Uh-oh, coughs ensuing. All right.
It was good. So it did taste like eggnog.
Okay. Had the nog.
The nog, the aftertaste is friggin' fantastic. It's like I had
Oh, I didn't even think to deal with that, the aftertaste.
the aftertaste. It's hitting me like if somebody created an eggnog mint that you could put in your mouth and suck on to like freshen your breath and stuff. That's
Like a lozenge.
I'm
Eggnog
getting that
lozenge.
vibe. I'm getting that vibe.
All right.
I can taste a little bit of cinnamon. I could see some people saying that the eggnog, the stuff in the middle, and the icing might be too much of a kick. But I had a quarter of the donut, so I'm good. But I could tell you, I think if I ate the whole one, it might be a bit much. But I didn't eat the whole one. And I mean, I do, you know this, I do like donuts that, I like to get the biggest bang for my buck. So if I'm looking at the donuts and I see a low profile donut and I see this donut that's the size of my head, I'm buying the one the size of my head because I want the most for my money, even though it's going to get in my beard. It's not going to be eaten easily. I perceive that as more bang for my buck. It was good. I liked the idea. I liked it. It was good. The cake, again, broken record, but the actual donut was had more structure to it today. But I appreciate that because then as I bite into it, when they're soft and moist and very malleable, it makes it worse for my beard. But when the cake is the donut is more structurally sound because it's a little bit older, it's great. It stands on its own. So
And
like
we've talked about this before, like memories of going with our dads to the donut shop. The kicker, so the first hit you got was just the idea you're hanging with dad, going to see the spot where he hangs out. You've talked about this, the barber shop. You talked about this, I think the barber shop, but you also talked about it from the taxi stand, like that, just those moments of going to see dad in a space that it's his other life. So going with dad, my dad to the Mama's Donuts, he rolls in, or people like, Pete, how's it going? And, he's just kind of like, and part of it wasn't that Pete was popular. It seemed like that at the time. What I now understand is that Pete was just part of a community. Because then Bob walks in, they're like, Bob, how's it going? I'm like, okay, so it wasn't just about Pete. You get that moment of like, my dad's cool, he knows people. And then you start to make the connection, like, oh, they're like friendly with everybody. And then times after that, they're like, Pete, and his boy. And then it was like Pete and Chris. So there was a time where I transitioned. I was welcomed into the community. So going there, that was your first dopamine hit. And then obviously for me, it was like getting a donut with my dad, getting the hot chocolate after skating on Sundays. But then there was always that moment, and this is the big dopamine hit, because your brain goes, will we or won't we get a bag of day olds? Will we or won't we get a bag of day olds? And I'll tell you primarily, like those day olds, most times it was Krillers. It was like the crunch, right? It was that walnut chocolate crunch, or you've called it like the cherry stick. My place, they also had orange as well. So it was a lot of Krillers. Krillers stand up, yo. Like the next day, next 2 days, they stand up. I wish that I could get those bag of day olds now, because the amount of coffee that I consume, like they're perfect with the hot drink, right? You don't realize that. When you're a kid, you don't actually realize that sort of like that synergy between the hot drink and the donut and the melting. You're just like, get me all that in my face. But you get older and you start to appreciate how it's like glove in hand. The crispy thing with the hot drink thing, and you're like, that's working magic, alchemy in your mouth. So getting that bag of day olds, so critical. So critical. You don't see that anymore. Tim's doesn't sell day olds, right? Doesn't sell day olds.
Nope. Um, there was this bakery that I would have loved to take you to when you visit Waterloo, but it's gone now. Norris Bakery.
Mm.
It was around forever, and then they just one day they announced, yeah, we're gone in 2 weeks. It's like, what?
Like New City, like my crew here, they're like, yeah, they're just we haven't been around.
They're just gone.
Yeah.
And they had day olds, and they were delicious. When I was a kid, my parents didn't buy day olds. I don't know why, they just didn't. Yeah. Do you have another donut?
I do. I have one more.
You gonna
So
rock it?
sure. So one of the things I'll preload this. I'll preload this with, in making the guesses yesterday about what my family would like, I had a pretty good idea. Plus, my family will still do the thanks for the donuts, Dad. Like they'll just be appreciative, right? But I wanted to get ones that were kind of a little bit more plain, a little bit more plain, a little bit more straightforward. So I got two. I got a straight up glazed, which short of just getting a plain donut, that's the one that shows thought. Like if you're there's nothing to hide behind, right? Like there's nothing behind to hide. You got donut and glaze. That's it. Both better taste good. Both better work well with each other. I think the brethren of that one is your cinnamon and sugar one. So just that sugared donut, right? So I got one of those each. Now my spouse, I figured she dropped the glazed one last night. And my family is a big fan. Like if we were given the choice between Tim's and Krispy Kreme, we're going Krispy Kreme. Like we've done that several times. Quick backstory: when my spouse and I, before we were spouse and I, we traveled. We met up with a couple that was in. They were going to university together in Boston or something like that. And they used to talk about when they didn't have anything on Friday night to do, they'd go to the show. And we didn't really have a clue about what this meant. So they explained, like, we'd go to the show. We'd go down to the local Krispy Kreme, and you could watch the donuts being made. And then we would get the hot donuts right away as they came out. I'm like, man, you call that the show? And this is long before Krispy Kreme kind of cracked open here in Canada. Like that's fairly, like Krispy Kreme, at least around where my neck of the woods, has only been in my neck of the woods for maybe less than 20 years, which I know sounds long, but the time that I'm going back to is before they actually arrived here. So we had this concept of Krispy Kreme, but we hadn't tasted one yet. We're like, why would anybody go and like watch donuts being made? Well, bro, I'll tell you. So Karen and I moved to Toronto at some point, and we would always drive from Toronto to Guelph, where we both met in university, where her family still was. And when we found out that they opened up one of the first Krispy Kremes in Ontario on Mavis Road, just west of Mississauga, we're like, well, how about we'll check it out? We'll check it out. We'll stop by there. It's just a short hop off the 401 West. So we go down there, and and it's still a pretty fresh, innovative. There's a lineup, first of all, like what lineup for donuts? And then we realized that part of the lineup is to get in the store. But the other part of the lineup, everyone's just like this. They got their hands cupped and they're looking in the window. We're like, what the hell's going on? They're watching the donuts come down the fryer conveyor, being flipped over. And you can see the back where all the donuts are being made. We're like, this is the show. So we kind of fell in love with that. And of course, like at that time, they have a ton of different donuts. Like there's the signature one, which is just the glazed. They have a ton. They have all donuts. They got some pretty good flavors too. I would say definitely the centerpiece is just a straight up glazed. It has the, if you've had it, you know, it somehow holds together. You put it in your mouth, it just melts, it disappears. I would say its nearest comparison would be if you're getting a French cruller from Tim Hortons. Like there's something about it, just kind of bite into it, kind of hollow, it's gone, boom, give me the next one. So we actually bought 2 dozen just of those, still slightly warm, freshly glazed, and brought them to Karen's parents' place. And they were gone. They're gone. Like it's like, why didn't we bring 3 dozen? So I have a very, I think, a well-informed base understanding that the fewer ingredients on a donut in any recipe, the fewer ingredients, if you can still, if you can raise that up in some way and it still be awesome, you should be able to. Karen said the words, "I'd rather have this than a Krispy Kreme." So desserts, you're never going to hear this podcast probably, but just so as a point of comparison, after all that backstory, Karen's in a bind. She's at a crossroads. Do I get the Krispy Kreme or do I get this glazed donut?
Wow.
The base donut is the same as this one. So that's my preamble to this. The base of it is the same one that they use for this. It's a little bit tighter of a crumb. There's not as many big, I can't even get the point of it right there. There's not as many big air pockets in it.
So while you're chewing that, Rochelle says, "Oh, we had a Krispy Kreme in Kitchener. It did not last. Can you believe that? It went under." Rochelle said, "In a pinch, Zare's donuts are pretty good." I would argue not even in a pinch. Whenever any of us go to Zare's, the text message that then ensues is "get donuts." So I just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, Clough, what's going on?
So here's the risk of just a powdered donut. And if any of you out there listening are fans of just the white sugar little donuts, you know that there's a fine line between I'm going to be able to swallow this donut or I need to get water to wash this donut down. And if you've ever coughed, well, you've had that, made the mistake of coughing or sneezing when you have the powdered donut, like you're just sugar bombing everyone around you, right? Like it just comes out your nose and then you're like, oh, yeah, and you pretty much you lose all your momentum. You're like, yeah, those donuts are dangerous. Screw off. I don't want any more. You come back later on though. This happens. So the risk, I think, with anything that's just a powdered coating, first thing, no matter what, I'm assessing, is this turning my mouth into a desert or is it making my mouth water? Now, this being a day old, it's already risking being a mouth sponge. It's already risking, right? That's the thing. And you got no glaze on it. You got no apples in it. You have no moisturizers in it. Natural moisturizers. There's no cream. There's no filling in it. For a day old, that was excellent. The aftertaste, it's funny with this one because it's simplicity. I'm getting hits of like fat, and it's just good tasty fat. Like it's clean, but it's kind of like I've had something kind of luscious. The sugar and cinnamon component was very balanced. I put it in my mouth, and because it was granulated sugar, I got this like explosion of crunch all over my mouth, like all inside, like biting into sugar crystals. And I don't know what they did with the cinnamon, but I feel like almost maybe the cinnamon had been mixed with sugar. So it was like almost like little grains of cinnamon as well. So it's just like crack, crack, crack. Not pop rocks, but it was like every bite until my mouth, the watering caught up with it. It's like I'm chewing through this little sweet and spicy granules. Delicious. Clean, flavor's gone. I don't even feel like I need to have a wash down with coffee. Flavor was good. I would have that donut again. I would put that in the classic. I don't know if it's funny. I don't know. That doesn't create an instant, like that as a cue doesn't create an instant craving. But if from this company, if a dozen of those, I know that if I put those out, at a brunch or with friends are coming over, people would like, it's kind of unassuming, but it was an excellent donut. Excellent donut.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that rundown. Very well done. Mm-hmm. The last donut on my plate is called the Candy Cane.
Okay, seasonal.
Yeah, seasonal, but also I have to tell you, the candy canes have melted. So there's a couple of pieces, but the rest has melted. Which
I like that.
I was going to say I don't mind because, again, I'm not sure about the little chunks of things I'm chewing on, like the peanuts, but I'd rather eat candy canes than peanuts if this is going to be the way. And
Uh,
again, like you said, pure seasonal. Like it's a regular donut with a like probably a white sugar icing, and then the candy canes were sprinkled on top. Now that they're melted, they're one with the glaze. So I'm looking forward to trying this. Actually,
so
I shouldn't
you
lie.
chew
I
you
tried
you
it
chew
last night.
yeah, you chew. Okay, so this one for me, um, I I I I think I have hopes on this one. I have hopes on this one because the flavors seem overly familiar. Like when I like my brain, I'm really good, and this is probably part of what helped me when I was still running restaurants. I have a strong flavor fluency. So if you're to tell me three different things that you wanted to put together into a sandwich, I can taste that with my brain, and I can also I can synthesize that and kind of say whether or not, you know, as individual components how they taste, but also kind of say I think this is like I could get a very fair guess as to whether or not that would taste okay, good, sometimes excellent. And I would also I can also do what does it connect to? So I can also give some cultural references as in, okay, if that's the ingredient you want to use, the cues that you're giving with the first two are kind of based in this culture. Here's that culture version of that. So the nearest example I would say, like if you said you want to include ginger in something, well, in some cultures, galangal is a ginger flavored kind of ginger. I might say use one over the other because it kind of harmonizes better with the other things in the flavor. When I saw this one, I was like, candy cane doesn't excite me, doesn't excite me. But I thought to myself, like the eggnog, and I'm happy the nog delivered because that one also I was kind of loading up for failure because if it didn't have the components, it's like, well, what the hell? Why bother with a seasonal donut? It's just stuff. My hope when I asked you to do this one is that it's somehow raised, like it somehow heightened the experience of having a candy cane. That's what I was hoping. That was, and it's okay if it didn't, but that was what I was kind of thinking.
Okay, so it was very simple. It
Hmm.
was a donut, but effective. As soon as as soon as I got that taste of candy cane, it's familiar, right? I'm like, okay, Christmas is here. Christmas season is here. I like that I didn't have to crunch the actual candy canes. I like that I just had the flavor, but not the crunch.
Hmm.
The donut was it stood up on its own, and the regular glaze was good. And I love the way the three of them meld. They meld well together.
Cool.
That's my take on that one. I would certainly get that one again at this time of year. I don't think I'd be buying a candy cane one in August, but I don't know.
All right. See, it's you know what? It's I I might be tempted to go candy cane in August. If there was
Okay,
something about it, like I'll do the pumpkin pie year round.
I'll do
You
that
know,
too. But
you know
there's
what I
just
mean.
something about candy cane. I don't know.
All right,
It was good though. So there we go. That this was the donut episode
I loved it.
and the educational chaos episode.
Edu chaos, baby.
Do you want to show us your art? Oh, it's a rabbit binkying. I love it. I'm gonna refer to that rabbit as Pretzel.
Nice. It's our pretzel. Your pretzel. Sorry, your pretzel. Our
My Pretzel.
guest. Thanks
Our
to the peeps that hung out with us. Rochelle, who is that? Rochelle, Richard. Were there any other R words?
Rochelle, Richard, and Romanique. Can we call it
No way.
Dominique? Dominique.
Dominique. That'd be awesome.
Thanks for checking it out, people. And for whoever is running into this after the fact, maybe Carlos. I don't know. I haven't heard from Carlos in a long time.
Oh,
Um,
Carlos.
Karen
We
sometimes checks out our podcast.
Yeah, I dare them. I dare them to make a connection between. So that's the challenge. Make a connection between student success, edu chaos, local baked goods, and everywhere else we landed.
It's pretty cool.
Leadership. There you go.
Okay, well, this was season 6, episode 13, number 221 of the Decoded podcast. Chris, have a great week, and hopefully we'll be doing this again next week.
Feel better, bro. Feel better.
Thanks. Peace.